Greetings in Christ, everybody. I am Steve Greene, Director of Holy Family Institute of Catholic Faith and Life, and this is Meet the Catechism. Today we're talking about paragraph number 159, paragraph 159 in the Catechism of the Catholic Church. Let's dive right in, shall we? The topic of 159 is faith and science. It's actually the little italicized title of the paragraph, Faith and Science. And this paragraph consists of two quotes. The first one is from the exhortation Dei Filius, and the second one is from the Pastoral Constitution on the Church in the Modern World from the Second Vatican Council, which is entitled Gaudium et Spes, which is joy and faith and joy and faith. I'm going to jump right in, and I'm going to stop periodically as I read here, and we'll just kind of discuss what these quotes are saying. So much good stuff in this paragraph, and especially on this question of faith and science, religion and science, faith and reason, which, as we all know, is a big debate in our current culture. That, of course, is a fact that's very well known to the authors of the Catechism, and so they write this paragraph very intentionally, speaking from the Catholic worldview and our Catholic understanding of these realities, not only to Catholics, but also to the culture. So let's take a look at paragraph 159. Faith and science. Though faith is above reason, there can never be any real discrepancy between faith and reason, since the same God who reveals mysteries and infuses faith has bestowed the light of reason on the human mind. God cannot deny himself, nor can truth ever contradict truth. Okay, so that's the end of the first quotation from Dei Filius, which is Latin for the children of God. So just to take a look at a couple things. First of all, like I said, the authors of the Catechism are well aware that in our current culture, faith and reason are pitched as being mutually exclusive, as being mutually incompatible, and as actually being contradictory to one another. So the way our culture sees it is you can either be a faith person or you can be a reason person, but you can't be both. In other words, you can be a religious believer or you can be scientific, but you can't be both scientific and a religious believer. Now, I won't belabor the point, but that's utter nonsense. It's utter foolishness. First of all, although some people would have you believe the opposite is true, the reality is there are myriad scientists who are also men and women of faith, men and women of deep and personal faith. And so the idea that you can't be a scientist or you can't be scientific or you can't be rational if you're a person of faith is disproved immediately by the fact that there are many gifted, highly competent, contributing scientists in every field of scientific endeavor who are also people of deep faith. Now, are there also plenty of atheists and agnostics in the various fields of science? Of course there are. We know that. But and then to make the point just a little clearer and drive it home a little deeper, the whole launching of the scientific revolution, right? And back in the 15th, 16th, 17th century, is littered with Christians doing science and also deeply professing and living their Christian faith. If you look at sort of the hall of fame of great scientists, the foundational scientists in all these different disciplines, you will find there are Catholics everywhere, including a lot of priests, nuns, religious brothers, etc., who were key contributors, even paradigm thinkers in the various physical sciences. So all that to say, nonsense to the whole faith versus reason, faith to the exclusion of reason, or reason to the exclusion of faith thing. That's just a false paradigm, and it's a dichotomy that doesn't actually exist. Nonetheless, that's the narrative. So right out of the gates here, the Catechism is reminding us that faith is above reason because faith, of course, the content of faith is revelation, what God has revealed to us about himself, about the universe, about ourselves, about reality, and God cannot err. God is truth itself, and he's also the creator of everything which exists. And so when God reveals the truth to us, we receive it by faith, but we know that that truth is certain. Now, when reason reveals truth to us, when we reason about things, when we use our rational intelligence to inquire after the truth, to try to figure out what's real, what's true, what's good, reason, of course, is also a means by which we can receive truth, but reason can err. Human beings can be wrong. We can miscalculate, or we can fail to see some piece of data or evidence that we needed to take into account. And of course, sometimes we can also bring our own biases into the process of reasoning about things. So faith is indeed above reason, but, and this is what the Catechism points out right from the beginning, both the light of faith, the lumen fide, and the light of reason, the lumen ratio, to use the Latin terms, they're both gifts given to us by God. For what reason? Why did he give us the light of faith? Why did he give us the light of reason? To see the truth, to know and understand the truth. He wants us to have the truth. He wants us to see reality clearly, to have a strong intellectual grasp on what's real and what's true, not least of which because what's real and true points us back to him. Okay, so having said that, I want to make, this is not quoted in paragraph 159, but I want to throw one more quotation in there from a church document. Pope St. John Paul II, who himself was a great fan of science and really a world-class philosopher, so very intellectual priest and then bishop and then, of course, eventually pope, he wrote an encyclical specifically on this topic called Fides et Ratio, which is Latin for faith and reason. And he opens that beautiful document with this line. He says, faith and reason are like two wings on which the spirit of man ascends to the contemplation of the truth. Let me say that again. Faith and reason are like two wings on which the spirit of man ascends to the contemplation of the truth. And then through the rest of that document, he's going to continue making this point about the compatibility of faith and reason. But notice he's just saying that God gives us these two gifts, the light of faith and the light of reason, so that we can rise intellectually. We can ascend to the contemplation of truth, which ultimately is to ascend to the contemplation of God himself, who is the truth and the founder of all reality. And that the analogy that he uses of a bird there is kind of lovely too, because it gives us that idea of being able to ascend to these great heights, like the great raptors, who can then have this view of this huge scope of reality, right? This huge, the bird's eye view of reality. But of course, there's another thing hidden in that analogy of the bird, because he says faith and reason are like the two wings, which means if we fall for our culture's current conception of things, that it's faith versus reason, they're incompatible, mutually exclusive, then we doom ourselves to be one-winged birds. If we insist, well, you can either be faith or reason, not both, and then we doom ourselves to be one-winged birds. And you don't need to be an ornithologist to know that it doesn't end well for one-winged birds. So we need to use faith and reason together. Okay, great. And because God's the source of both, God can never contradict himself. Truth can never contradict truth. So the truth of faith and the truth of reason will always be compatible and will always be different ways of arriving at the same truth. Okay, so back to 159. It now moves into the second quotation, which is slightly longer, and this is from Gaudium et Spes, again, the Pastoral Constitution on the Church in the Modern World from Second Vatican Council. It says, consequently, methodical research in all branches of knowledge, provided it is carried out in a truly scientific manner, does not override moral laws, can never conflict with the faith, because the things of the world and the things of faith derive from the same God. Okay, so I'm going to pause there in that quotation. So it's saying pick any branch of knowledge, any field of human intellectual endeavor, as long as it's being pursued in a truly scientific manner, which means both objectively and in an honest quest for the truth. So we're honestly pursuing the truth. We want to know and discover what's true in this field of intellectual endeavor. And we're doing it as objectively as we can. None of us, of course, is a perfectly objective observer, but we're striving to be as objective as we can because we want the truth. We don't want our bias built into things. So when intellectual endeavor is done in that truly scientific manner, and when intellectual research and scientific research does not override moral laws, meaning we don't begin to pursue this research by immoral means, then the truths that we derive from this intellectual endeavor will never contradict the truths of the faith, because God is the source of both faith and reason, and God is the source of the things of this world, of nature itself, and of course of the truths that are revealed by faith. Okay, so and then we'll go to the final quotation here. Okay, so then it wraps up by saying, "The humble and persevering investigator of the secrets of nature is being led, as it were, by the hand of God, in spite of himself. For it is God, the conserver of all things, who made them what they are." End of the quote. And that's the end of paragraph 159. Again, it consists of those two quotes. So let's look at that last statement there. First of all, it begins by describing someone. It describes the humble and persevering investigator of the secrets of nature. What an interesting description. So who is the humble and persevering investigator of the secrets of nature? The honest scientist, the good scientist, the scientist who is, first descriptor is humble, the scientist who is humble before what we don't know, who is humble before the great mysteries of the universe, the scientist who is humble even before the professional vocation of being a scientist, knowing that he or she is entrusted with this great responsibility of striving to know and understand, and therefore help others know and understand more deeply and see with greater clarity the truths of the natural world, the secrets of the natural world, the order of the universe. And so the humble and persevering investigator, meaning someone who is going to dedicate themselves to this good, but also often very difficult and tedious and strenuous work of doing science well, doing it honestly, doing it objectively, questing after the truth. So the humble and persevering investigator of the secrets of nature is just the church's fancy catechism way of saying a good and honest scientist, a good, humble, honest scientist seeking the truth. And it says that the good, honest, humble scientist is being led by the hand of God. Why would the church say that? That they're being led by the hand of God? And notice, in spite of himself, even if he or she's not aware of that fact. Well, it's because God is the conserver of all things and the one who made them what they are. This is the language of paragraph 159 in the Catechism here. So God is the one who holds the universe in existence, and he's the one who brought the universe into existence. And so as the humble, honest scientist begins investigating the secrets of nature, begins investigating the universe, what he or she is discovering is the universe that exists because God brought it into being and continues to exist because God is holding it in being, and that it is God who ordered the universe, who wove all of the laws and constants into the very fabric of created reality itself, and then left them there for the scientist to discover. Johann Kepler, I don't remember if Kepler was Catholic or not, but he was Christian and a faithful, believing Christian, and of course one of the on the Mount Rushmore of astronomers. Kepler had this to say, and you listen, hear the humility of an honest scientist, but also the great faith of a believing scientist, of a Christian doing science. In this observation, Kepler, reflecting on the great vocation that had been entrusted to him as an astronomer and as a mathematician and as a scientist, said, "I have the privilege as an astronomer, as a scientist, of thinking God's thoughts after him." Isn't that a lovely way to say that? I have the privilege as a scientist of thinking God's thoughts after him. In other words, what Kepler realized is as he did his science, he was, in a sense, pulling prints off of the reality of the universe, right? This is God's universe. His fingerprints are all over the universe he created. And as Kepler explored the great order and design and the laws and constants that govern heavenly bodies and physics and all this kind of stuff, as he did this scientific work, he just realized, I'm following along behind the creator and the conserver of this beautiful, ordered universe. I get to think God's thoughts after him. He thought all of this into being. It's brought into existence by his will, by his eternal intention and his divine intellect. And then he gives us, and this is a point that we need to catch in paragraph 159 as well, and this is what I'll wrap up with. God gave us the light of reason, the gift of rational intelligence, so that we could do science, so that we could pursue all the different fields of intellectual endeavor, because he knows that with the gift of rational intelligence, which he gave us in order to map it onto the intelligible universe he created, he knew that as we discovered the intelligibility, the order, the laws of the universe that he wove into the very fabric of the existence of creation, that we would recognize, as Kepler did, that we're looking at the handiwork of the God who loves us and who desires us to know him. And so the universe itself points beyond itself to God. All that contained here. So we take away from it, faith and science are not exclusive of one another, but inclusive and mutually illuminating as God intended them to be. And so as Catholics, we need to be not faith or reason people, but faith and reason people, and to embrace all those who are pursuing honestly the truth and the beauty and the goodness which God wrote into the universe that he created. Great. Thanks so much for watching. Feel free to share, of course, with anyone you think might be interested. And until next time, remember that the church has what the world needs. So learn your faith, live your faith, and share your faith. God bless, and we'll see you next time.